Have you ever woken up to a world that suddenly feels unstable? Economies are crumbling, governments are teetering, and investors are fleeing nations that once seemed untouchable. And now Canada, our own country, is standing at a critical turning point in its modern history. Grocery prices are climbing, interest rates are rising, families are feeling the squeeze, and our manufacturing sector has contracted for 8 consecutive months. The federal deficit has already surged to nearly $8 billion in just 4 months, leaving critics to warn that we are standing on the edge of a cliff. But is this the full story? Or is there a deeper truth hiding behind the headlines? Is Canada truly on the verge of collapse, or is something more profound quietly unfolding?
Mr. Speaker, there's a little thing called cause and effect. And the cause that the Leader of the Opposition is missing is the U.S. tariffs. The U.S. tariffs that are hitting steel, the U.S. tariffs that are hitting lumber, the U.S. tariffs that are hitting our auto sector. That's why we need to build this country strong. That's why we're getting spending under control. That's why we're going to spend less to invest more. I believe in this country, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable...
And if you want to understand the real story behind the numbers, hit subscribe to Canada Vault now, because what you're about to hear will challenge everything you thought you knew about this country. Since he took office, 86,000 more Canadians are unemployed. We have the second highest unemployment in the G7.
Since he took office, 86,000 more Canadians are unemployed. We have the second highest unemployment in the G7. This is all the result of out-of-control government spending and taxes.
This is the hard, immediate reality critics are shrieking about, outlining a vista of hopelessness and threatening that all that is done in Ottawa is driving Canadians closer to economic disaster. Each dollar the Prime Minister spends, they claim, comes straight out of the pockets of the common people. The Parliamentary Budget Officer has characterized the deficits as very alarming, stupefying, shocking, unsustainable. Those words are designed to frighten, but that only speaks half the truth. The opposition yells alarms about out-of-control spending, about billions of dollars departing Canada, and the worst record of investment of the G7. They say that families are hurting in the aisles of grocery stores, that the cost of living is unaffordable. But in their wails of alarm, they never provide a solution. Cut healthcare? Abandon infrastructure? Cut pensions? Their answer is fear, not response. Meanwhile, Canada is building quietly. Billions are being spent on green energy, strategic minerals, modular nuclear reactors, LNG growth, and port facility projects. These are not vanity projects. They are the foundation of Canada's long-term economic plan. Jobs are being produced, energy security is being put first, and the country is being made ready for competitiveness on the world stage. Families are feeling it too. The consumer carbon tax is gone, and the Build Canada Homes initiative will put 500,000 new homes on the market every year. Critics hold on to grocery store inflation, but the facts disagree. No GST on groceries. No carbon tax on corner stores. Food inflation is dropping more quickly than most developed nations now. The strain is genuine. The alarms being sounded by the Parliamentary Budget Officer are not melodrama. If Canada does not navigate cautiously, something could actually break.
Under this government, investment has fallen. How much more debt would they have to add on the backs of Canadians to reverse this disastrous result?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
But the story does shift here. Carney's administration is already moving. Growth in spending is being reduced from more than 7% a year to sustainable levels. Ministries are shaving their budgets by 7 to 12%. And selective investment is targeting areas that will create durable, stable growth. That is not recklessness. That is strategy. Confidence is the intangible energy that propels countries. Without it, economies collapse. With it, they grow. Mark Carney is widely respected not only for his command of numbers, but also for his command of the mind of the market. He steadied the Bank of England, led the Bank of Canada, and now leads the country to long-term strength. Canada's AAA credit rating, the G7's lowest debt-to-GDP ratio, and some of the lowest long-term interest rates, even lower than the United States, are evidence that this isn't collapse, this is strength in action. And still, the theatrics go on. Fiscal ineptness, struggle meals, and disaster still scream from the mouths of critics. But beneath the bellowing is a different truth. Wages are actually increasing steadily. Employment is being generated in energy, housing, and the nation's most vital infrastructure. And billions are being spent on the industries that will shape the country for decades to come. Canada isn't just weathering the tempest. It is preparing to ride it out stronger, smarter, and better placed to compete in the world. So now the question is, what will Canadians believe? The shallow propaganda of fear, doom, and despair? Or the leadership that gets global forces, acts boldly, and creates a strong future? The answer is ours. Canada is resourceful, innovative, and resilient, a country capable not just of getting through it, but of growing stronger than ever before. And as we go forward, the actual history of Canada's power continues to be written, one line at a time, one project at a time, one decision at a time. Canada is at a fork in the road, and the decisions made today will reverberate for decades to come. While critics protest deficits, unemployment, and economic insecurity, the country is taking quietly steps that few headlines reveal. Below the surface, billions of dollars are flowing into projects that will not only keep the country afloat, but remake it. From renewable energy to strategic minerals, from small nuclear reactors to port upgrades, Canada is building a platform that holds the prospect of long-term stability and opportunity. Opposition voices still scream about what's been sacrificed: jobs, investment, and perceived fiscal responsibility. They cite statistics, conjure worst-case scenarios, and present every failure as evidence that the nation is heading out of control. And yet, if you examine more closely, the image is considerably more nuanced. Yes, some historic industries have experienced capital flight, but new sectors are drawing historic levels of investment. Housing programs, energy ventures, and infrastructure build-out are creating jobs and cementing the nation's economic future. It's a tricky balance between addressing near-term pressures and creating the foundation for long-term growth. Behind this change is a conscious strategy. Ministries are being made responsible for cutting spending, making sure the resources are used where they will have the greatest impact. Focused investments in housing, energy, and infrastructure are not expenses, they're blocks of resilience. Each new house, each new power plant, each refurbished harbor is a tangible indication that Canada is gearing up for what lies ahead while keeping an eye on development. But tension exists. Families are pinched by increased costs. Food costs more than it did in past years, interest rates are up, and some industries are still weighed down by international pressures. It is here, in the daily lives of Canadians, that the emotional struggles are most apparent. The critics multiply these challenges, portraying them as proof that the nation is losing its way. But to those who will set aside the headlines, the truth is more complicated. Policy reforms are already alleviating pressures, and targeted investments are creating a foundation for long-term prosperity. Global currents introduce another level of complexity. Tariffs, trade pressures, and global market fluctuations are challenging the country's economic flexibility. But instead of giving in to these pressures, Canada is adjusting. New possibilities are being captured, domestic businesses fortified, and progressive investments taking potential weaknesses and converting them into competitive strengths. Every obstacle is an opportunity to showcase resilience. Every deliberate choice a step forward towards a more robust future. The tension mounts every few minutes. Will these investments pay off as Canada requires? Will policies in Canada take the edge off pressures from international forces? Can long-term strategy take the short-term pain that families and industries are feeling? These are all questions that set a natural tension in motion and keep the story unfolding, keeping the audience interested and wanting to know what happens next. Leadership is key to this story. The skill to ride uncertainty, to read challenges ahead, and to move boldly is essential. Every policy move, every budgetary choice, every focused investment bears the stamp of a thoughtful realization of domestic requirements and international movements. Canada is not moving in the dark. Every step is taken cautiously, every move deliberate, every venture planned to work towards long-term stability and expansion. Meanwhile, Canadians are catching sight of success. Real wages are climbing steadily, families are enjoying tax relief and home programs, and the infrastructure being constructed has the potential to spread a ripple effect of opportunity and security. The irony between the critics' doomsday warnings and the real progress being made throughout the country is staggering. Canada is not just weathering the tempest, it is building positively for the future. As Part 2 continues on, the tension in the narrative increases. Questions arise regarding how these investments will define national power, how the economy will react to international and national tensions, and whether the vision for Canada's destiny will come to fruition. Each achievement, each failure, and each policy action weighs, creating expectations for the next chapter of the narrative. At the conclusion of this chapter, it is apparent that Canada's path is not marked by fear or panic. It is characterized by resilience, strategic foresight, and the capacity to transform adversity into opportunities. The foundation that is established today will have an impact on the future of the country for years to come. And as we approach the last installment of this narrative, the stakes become higher. The legacy of these projects and policies will determine if Canada will be able to fully achieve its potential, emerge as a country greater, wealthier, and more robust than ever before. What will Canada be when the dust clears? The investments, policies, and ambitious strategies of the last few months are finally yielding fruit, yet the full effect is still unfolding. Each project finished, each job created, and each policy enacted is part of a greater story, one of resilience, of vision, and of a nation committed not merely to survive, but to prosper. Nationwide, the hallmarks of change are evident. Housing projects are offering shelter to thousands of Canadians who formerly had difficulty finding stability. Green power projects are producing clean energy while establishing new industries and jobs. Modular nuclear reactors are being brought online, providing long-term energy security. Critical mineral mines are opening up resources which will drive innovation and international competitiveness for decades to come. Each of these advances is a strand in the broader tapestry of Canada's future, spinning a narrative of resilience, possibility, and strategic aspiration. But tension still hangs in the air. Opponents continue to raise deficits, mounting costs, and economic unease. Papers trumpet vulnerability and oncoming crisis. Households still experience inflation and interest rate pressures, and certain sectors continue to struggle with forces of global trade. But here, in the disparity between perception and truth, the narrative comes alive. The statistics relay a different message. Wages are steadily rising. Family budgets are being helped by tax relief, and strategic investments are bearing real fruit across the country. Not luck, purposeful, strategic action. Suspense pushes forward every few minutes. Will these projects have their desired effects? Can Canada sustain energy in the face of pressures worldwide? Will strategic investments produce long-term stability and growth that careful planning has promised? Each question raises anticipation, holding the audience's attention, while at the same time highlighting the country's ability to convert challenges into opportunity. Leadership is at the heart of this tale. To deal with complicated global pressures, vision is not enough. One must have the courage to act firmly. Each policy change, each budget decision, and each piece of infrastructure is a thoughtful weighing of risk and reward. Canada is not being reactive. It is being strategic, looking forward to challenges and setting itself up for long-term success. This is leadership in action, measured, thoughtful, and calculated to ensure the future of the nation. Meanwhile, Canadians are starting to see tangible gains. Employment is being generated, communities are prospering, and the fruits of progressive policies are being seen in homes throughout the nation. The juxtaposition of critics' doomsday warnings and the unfolding reality of success is stark. Canada is not simply weathering international and domestic challenges, it is laying the groundwork for a more competitive, more resilient, and stronger future. The emotional consequences escalate when we look at the bigger picture. Confidence, after all, is the currency that fuels nations. Without it, economies falter. With it, they flourish. Canada's AAA credit rating, low debt-to-GDP ratio, and low long-term interest rates are not just statistics. They are proof of resilience, discipline, and strategic planning. And while challenges remain, the nation is actively transforming uncertainty into opportunity, laying the groundwork for sustained prosperity. As the narrative approaches its conclusion, one thing is certain: Canada is not crumbling. It is on the rise. The investments that are being made today, whether in energy, housing, infrastructure, or key industries, are building a country that can meet international challenges and emerge more resilient than ever before. The way ahead will not be smooth, but overcoming every challenge strengthens the fortitude. the resolve and the vision that characterize Canada's path. The last decision is now ours. Will Canadians accept a vision of resilience, opportunity, and strategic growth? Will we look beyond fear, hype, and headlines to acknowledge the concrete progress that is being made? Or will we let panic and skepticism taint perception, distorting the evidence of a nation transforming? The answer is not in rhetoric, not in speculation, but in the reality unfolding of Canada's projects, policies, and leadership. This is why your voice counts. Subscribe to Canada Vault, comment, share this video, and be part of a movement that will not settle for noise and fear. See the story of Canada's revolution for yourself, and stand with a nation that is not only surviving but prospering, constructing, and establishing a future for generations to come. Canada is on the rise, and with your help, we'll make sure it attains the greatness it deserves.